Hello and welcome to episode 32 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. Last month, our good friend Sarah from Seattle and I returned to Disneyland for the first time since the resort reopened in May of this year. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what it was like to be back inside Walt's original park. It was a really emotional trip and one I know I will certainly not forget. After that conversation, I'm going to talk a little bit about my opinions on some of the new, controversial changes coming to the Disney parks, from Genie Plus to the new annual pass holder system at Walt Disney World. There is a lot happening. With all of these changes, it does make planning for your next vacation even more complicated. As an authorized Disney vacation planner, I would be honored to help you put together your next trip. We can decide whether Genie Plus is right for you, or if it would be worth it to purchase an AP. Maybe some of the additional expenses have you looking to save money in other ways. Of course, I can help with all of that. My services are always 100% free to you, and I don't just do Walt Disney World and Disneyland. I can also help you with Disney Cruise Line, Universal Orlando Resort, Universal Hollywood, Disneyland Paris, New York City, Las Vegas, and many other locations throughout the world. Email me at rick@eartotheretravel.com, rick@eartotheretravel.com, or call 727-507-3123, 727-507-3123. Not only can I help you make some of these decisions with the right information, but it also really would help the show. For pictures, videos, live streams, blogs, and other information from the parks, visit me on social media, facebook.com/eartothererick, twitter.com/rick_ear, instagram.com/rickear2there, and twitter.com/tgttpodcast. We will also have a Halloween and fall themed giveaway happening very, very soon. I'm putting together everything this week. Now let's welcome back Sarah from Seattle. How are you doing today, Sarah?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Are you rested up finally? Have you been able to get back to a normal routine, gotten past the Disney blues?
Yeah, finally. It's still all this last week. I'd look at earlier in the week and go, oh, this time last week I was doing this, or this last week I was doing that. But it took a few days to make my feet stop throbbing. but no, definitely getting back into the swing of life.
So when was the last time that you were at Disneyland?
Oh my gosh, it was in February of 2018, 2019, one of those, 2018, I think.
So after such a long time, go through the emotions of just finally walking through the gates into Disneyland and stepping foot onto Main Street USA again.
Yeah, so it was emotional. I'm not going to lie, it was a little weird because there was no line to get in, which I was not expecting. I mean, I got there at about like 3:00 p.m., 3:30-ish, but it was really exciting. I was kind of nervous. I started to get more choked up as I went under the bridge, the railway bridge, and turned onto Main Street. And as I started walking down, you have the whole, like, what's that section called when you first walk in? The
Town Square.
Yeah, the town square, before you even get to the street where you can see the castle. And where I really kind of started to feel like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, get really excited, is I hit it right at a time that the marching band came out. So I hadn't even gone down Main Street yet. And I have a video, because I was videoing it as I went in, because I'm like, okay, I have to remember this moment from when I walked in. And I turn, and right by Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, there's an opening, and they start coming out. Well, then they turn, they go around Town Square and down the street. So I have a video of them and like watching them come out and then go down Main Street, and then there's the castle like right there. Oh my God, it was a magical experience.
Yeah, so we hit a few hiccups, which is funny because I was, of course, the travel agent on the trip, and Sarah's tickets came out fine. So I know that I did everything the proper way, but for some reason my tickets were a little bit messed up, so I had to run through a couple of those things. And then my wife, Courtney, who has been on the show before, she was with me as well, and we finally got our tickets straightened out, and we walked onto Main Street USA, and I was just basically like Russell Crowe in Gladiator, just had my arms spread out, and I was just looking at her like, are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Like, we hadn't been there since March of 2019 to Disneyland, so as much as it was emotional getting back to Walt Disney World because we go there so often, in reality, for me, it was like 3 months in between trips. And for her, it was maybe more like 5 months in between trips before she got back to the parks. But we really weren't missing Walt Disney World for all that long. But Disneyland, we were missing it, and it was really, really cool to just walk down Main Street USA. We got there a few hours earlier than Sarah, and actually were able to get a boarding group for Rise of the Resistance, which we were in line for that ride when Sarah got there, which was a little rude on our part, but she had to be there for us to be able to link up our tickets and everything. So don't worry, she got to ride it plenty.
Okay, because it gave me time to like take my time to go down Main Street. I went down to the hub and I hung out at the castle and I went into Frontierland a little bit, and so it worked out just fine.
Yeah, my first ride was Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. I looked at the app the second we got in there, and it was 5-minute wait. And everybody knows how much I love Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. As much as I love the one at Walt Disney World, the one at Disneyland is so much better. And it was like a sign that I had to go quickly do Big Thunder Mountain Railroad while it was only a 5-minute wait, because I didn't realize it was basically going to be a 5-minute wait all week. That's probably the second thing I'm going to discuss here. How surprised were you with the crowd levels? I think we knew that the crowd levels were lower, but it's one thing to know that intellectually, and it's another thing to see it in person and realize just how easy it was to get on almost everything.
Yeah, I was shocked. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I've told everyone since I've been home when we talk about my trip, is I don't remember the last time that I was at Disneyland and the crowd levels were that low and the wait times were that low. I could not believe like how low the wait times were. And even at the times it felt more crowded. And I mean, of course, that walkway between Adventureland and New Orleans Square and like certain bottleneck areas always feel crowded, but it literally it was not. It was amazing.
There was a time that we were walking through Adventureland and you were like, oh, this is starting to feel more like a Disneyland crowd because there were a lot of people out there. But then we walked past Indiana Jones and it was listed at 35 and Jungle Cruise was 25 minutes. So even when it was feeling crowded, it was more people were in the walkways than they were in queues for the rides. I know the longest wait that I had the entire week was Courtney and I waited 40 minutes for Radiator Springs Racers because she hadn't done it at that point during the trip. She had never done it before in her life, so I wanted to make sure she got to experience that ride. We probably could have timed it a little better at some point where she wouldn't have had to wait 40 minutes, but we waited 40 minutes for that, and that was by far the longest we waited. I know that we had 10 minutes for Indiana Jones the one time, 15 minutes for Indiana Jones, and for all intents and purposes, that was walking through the queue.
All it was. And yeah, and even for 45 minutes for Radiator Springs, that's like nothing. Because on a normal day pre-COVID, the lowest wait I ever saw for that was 65 to 70 minutes. It was never shorter than that. And it was just amazing. And it felt like, most of the time that we were waiting, it was us walking through the queue to get on the ride.
People who follow my social media know how much I like to take pictures of queues and all those details and things like that. I don't even have a lot of pictures from the Indiana Jones queue because we weren't in it long enough. I felt like a couple times we got stuck in the room with the safety instructions that are only like 30 seconds long and you just hear it over and over again and it starts to get a little annoying. But I don't think we were there more than 5 minutes.
No.
And apparently, from what Sarah tells me, although I was not able to witness it with my own eyes, there's a hidden Eeyore in that room with the film strip at Indiana Jones. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah, so Indiana Jones sits where the Eeyore parking lot used to be. Back in the days when you had a parking lot and not DCA and all this other stuff. And so what they did is they hid a sign up behind the projector, and it's really, really hard to see. You can find pictures on the internet where somebody's been brave enough to take a flash camera in that room and find it, but it is very, very hard to see because of how dark it is. But yeah, it's hidden up. If when you're walking in, you look straight up at the projector, it's in that area there. But yeah, it's super hard to see.
And I'm just going to say, multiple times I rode Radiator Springs Racers because Sarah and I rope dropped it the one morning. And then, as I said, Courtney and I waited for it the one evening. I know we did multiple Pirates of the Caribbean. I think I did Big Thunder Mountain Railroad 5 or 6 times. I did Mr. Toad like 3 or 4 times. We didn't just get to do rides once or twice. We got to do them, for all intents and purposes, as many times as we wanted.
Yeah, it was amazing not to have to worry about skipping out on anything. Though when I got home with my giant bruise on my arm, I was telling my sister, I'm never riding Matterhorn again, ever. I tried. This is my last go. I've retired from the Matterhorn.
So I have a funny story about the Matterhorn, and Sarah knows where I'm going with this one. So we were in line together. Courtney was not going to ride it. That just wasn't happening. So she went to Main Street to wait for the fireworks. And Sarah and I got in line, and we went through the entire queue. Now, granted, that was maybe a 5-10 minute wait. And then we tried to get into our bobsleds, and it just wasn't happening for me. And it was not a wait thing. Like, you could be like, this isn't one of those, like, universal arguments that's been going on the internet right now. It wasn't that. It was just I was simply too tall for the part of the Matterhorn where they put me, and I just couldn't get my legs to bend enough to fit them in there, and I had to quickly jump out, and they were like, okay, we can try to put you in seat 1 in another car. And I'm like, well, try to do that because this isn't working. And the guy who was in seat 1 in front of me, in the bobsled in front of me, I'm like, how tall are you? He's like 6'6". I'm like, okay, I'm only 6'4", so I should be able to do this one. The only thing I would maybe criticize, and I don't really criticize cast members very often, and this might not even be a cast member thing, but maybe just have a sign that says, hey, if they're over 6 feet tall, put them in the first one. Because it was not going to happen. And it was a few inches. So if you're 6'1", 6'2", you might want to say, hey, put me in the first car. And then after all that, it's the Matterhorn, and it's just not as great as you think. It's so iconic looking, but it never has the magic of some of the other mountains in Disney fandom or anything like that. I think it's definitely turned into a skip for me as well, and that's not even considering the bruising, because you did have your arm pretty bruised up there.
To worry, I had like a hairline fracture. I'm like at home, I'm like, God, it still hurts. And I look down, I'm like, there, I thought it was part of my tattoo. And I'm like, that is a bruise. That's a big bruise.
And then after Matterhorn, what we did was met up with Courtney on Main Street USA to watch Mickey's Mix Magic, the fireworks and projection show. We didn't get there in time to be really, really close to the castle, but I think I prefer where we actually did stand, because we got to see all of the projections on Main Street USA. People who watch Happily Ever After at Walt Disney World are used to the projections mainly being on the castle. But at Disneyland, the projections are mainly down Main Street USA. This was my first time seeing this show. I believe it was your first time seeing the show as well.
Yep.
What did you think about it?
I loved it. I was not expecting the projections all the way down Main Street, especially to the detail that they were. Because like you were saying, I'm actually really happy with the spot we ended up standing in, because you got to see the super cool projections all the way down and then still see the ones on the castle. Yeah, of course, we weren't right in front of it, but you didn't miss anything because it was right next to you on either side. And then the other parts of it, like the snow during the Frozen part that they had. I don't know if that part was up at the castle or not, but we definitely got to experience it and it was super fun. But yeah, the music was fun, the whole fire, everything. It was great.
I was pleasantly surprised because you don't hear people talk about Mickey's Mix Magic like they talk about Happily Ever After.
Right.
And I think it definitely deserves it. I don't think it has the feels of Happily Ever After. Like, Happily Ever After will tug at the heartstrings, and this is just fun, but it's really, really fun. One weird thing that all three of us noticed and said immediately after the show was finished is the fireworks are set off a little bit to the left of the castle for some reason. I'm sure there is a reason for it. We just don't happen to know it. I haven't looked it up or anything. But that is kind of strange a little bit. I'm sure it has something to do with the location of Toontown or the construction for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway back there or something like that. But it is just a little bit off center and it's a little bit weird.
When they do multiple at a time that went across, they were in a perfect alignment. And then, yeah, it's just the big ones all of a sudden would just show up on the left side of the castle. And it was like, oh, huh, okay. All right. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it'll start there, they'll go the other, and then they'll end in the middle. But no, it didn't.
So in a future episode, we're going to focus more on Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Avengers Campus over at Disney's California Adventure. But I did want to talk a little bit about Disney's California Adventure and how you felt the vibe was there compared to the last time you were there. I feel like even though we're going to talk about Avengers Campus in a separate episode, even when you're not in Avengers Campus, its impact is felt. It feels like a fuller park now that it has Avengers Campus. Does that make sense to you? Like, am I describing that correctly?
No, it totally does, especially at your main, like when you're entering. I mean, yeah, of course we rope dropped so we could do Radiator Springs with everyone else who rope dropped. and, but no, it really does. And I remember mentioning to you as well that I really felt like now when California Adventures first opened, it was a half day park. Maybe it was more of a quarter day, half day park. You would go for a little bit and then head back to Disneyland. Where now, especially with Avengers Campus and the amount of people that are there, it definitely feels a lot more like a full day park now. And just there's a lot more like hustle and bustle going on in the park than I felt there was previously.
I think there are now 3 major lands that evenly distribute the crowds, which is really, really important. It's always buzzing over at Pixar Pier. Obviously, people are always going to be packed into Cars Land. Even when the Cars Land rides don't have long wait times, there's still a lot of people hanging out on that street. But now they also have Avengers Campus, and there are always people in Avengers Campus because of what's going on there. And that is important.
Mm-hmm.
So like anything in 2021, we can't escape talking about safety and some of the things that have changed due to the pandemic. One of them is that this was your first experience with character cavalcades. Did you get to catch any of the character cavalcades, and what did you think about it?
I don't, to be completely honest, I don't think I saw one at all the whole time we were there. I saw the marching band twice. I saw it once on the way, actually funny, right when I came in and right when I was exiting, when I was headed out to head to California Adventures to finish off before I got to the airport. And I saw characters with that and then characters just like, especially at the train station and at other places around like the hub and stuff. And I don't remember seeing a cavalcade at all.
So at Walt Disney World, now they're posting the times for the character cavalcades, and they don't officially post the times at Disneyland, but if you ask a plaid, one of the cast members who's wearing a plaid vest, they usually do have the times written down when the cavalcades will be happening. So we did make sure that we got to catch the Anna and Elsa cavalcade. We did catch a more generic Mickey, Minnie, I think Genie was there, Chip and Dale, all of those characters that maybe were doing socially distant meet and greets in the park that day as well, and then they come down Main Street USA every once in a while. we got to catch both of those. The character cavalcades are definitely a different vibe in Disneyland because they still run the Main Street vehicles. They are still doing a lot of stuff on Main Street USA where they don't run the character cavalcades as often as they do at the Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World. Simply because I believe Main Street USA is busier at Disneyland. There are more people who just hang out on Main Street USA, where at Magic Kingdom, it feels like people are just shooting right through, get your picture of the castle, and get to your next ride.
Well, I'm glad you guys actually got to see the character cavalcades because I was really starting to believe that they did not exist in Disneyland.
No, they do. They're just a lot rarer than they are at Magic Kingdom, and I guess there's a bunch of different reasons for that. Now, as far as safety, I know you were very concerned. You were going to be going back to a child and a husband, and you did not want to bring anything back with you. And how did you feel safety-wise?
I actually felt completely safe the whole time we were there. I mean, it was hot. So there were times that I did take my mask off when we weren't around a lot of other people, when we were eating, things like that. But I did keep it on pretty much the whole rest of the time because I was just like, I don't know where these people are coming from. I don't know who's vaccinated, who's not. But man, I've never seen so many hand sanitizer stations in my life. I told my sister and my mom when I got home, I was like, you guys, literally every 50 feet, you can sanitize your hands. Every time you get off a ride, you can sanitize your hands. I was like, they're everywhere and it's amazing.
Okay, you really should have been in the parks in July of 2020. It was insane the number of hand sanitizing stations that you could find at Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando Resort at the time. I mean, at Universal, they used to squeeze the hand sanitizer onto your hand before you got on every ride. They wouldn't even let you get it yourself. They would pump the container right onto your hands. But that is something that I don't think of because of how often I've been going since Walt Disney World reopened in July and Universal opened in June of last year, because it didn't feel like they had a lot of hand sanitizer stations to me, because those have been slowly not going away, but they have stopped making a comical exaggeration of how many they're going to put everywhere. Because now it's not just about image, it's actually about keeping people's hands sanitized. And I think at the beginning it was, look at how many we have, and now it's, where do we need them, where do we need to keep them stocked, and how can we feel safe? I will say, as somebody who was outside of Florida for the first time since the pandemic, it's probably the safest I have felt. I have felt safe at Walt Disney World, and I have felt safe at Universal as well. But when I'm not in theme parks in Florida, I definitely don't feel safe all the time. I mean, I'm vaccinated and I'm in pretty good shape. I'm not as worried as some other people, and I'm worried about passing it to people more than anything else. But I didn't feel there was anything about which to worry at Disneyland. Even though social distancing has kind of gone away, there aren't the stickers like there were at Walt Disney World when everything first reopened. But people weren't all up in your business in the queues. I felt perfectly fine.
Yeah, I do have one really funny story when so I was riding the Incredicoaster and this girl in front of me just whips out this bag of thing of Clorox wipes, and she was ready. I could tell she had been doing this. Like she knew what she's doing. As soon as she gets in, she has it in her hand, she pulls the top thing down and she wipes it down really fast, and then she tucks it away and holds on. And I was like, oh, she's done this before. And I was trying not to laugh because it was hilarious just how efficient she was, but I was like, she's safe.
That is very funny, and I kind of felt a little bit like that with the two of you, between Courtney and you being very sanitized and always having the hand wipes and things like that at the ready. To know that there was somebody there who was taking it even more seriously than the two of you.
Yeah.
So this was kind of like your first solo trip.
Yeah, it was the very first time I've been there. without a friend or a family member with me. This is like a friend, like actually, it's always been a family member with me or a friend with my family. So yeah, it's the first time I've gone there. I mean, yes, I did stop and say hi to my family on the way, but yeah, it was the first time I was flying solo.
So even though you did spend a lot of time with us, and that was awesome, and I absolutely loved it, and it was a whole lot of fun, but even just going by yourself and having it be your own schedule, even if we kind of did put together a schedule together, you weren't bound by that like you would be if you were, say, with your kid.
Totally, totally.
How did you find that experience?
It was really like, it was really, I'm not gonna lie, it was really fun. There were parts, that were kind of like, oh, I wish, there was a lot of times I was thinking, oh, I wish my husband was here. I wish my kid was here. I wish my parents, my whole family were here, experience this with me. But at the same time, it was really nice. Like when I first got there, like we talked about earlier, and I was just kind of doing my own thing till you guys were done with Rise. And it was awesome to not have to rush down Main Street and know, okay, we're going straight to this ride. We're going straight to this ride, and having to like try and get what everybody wants to do all the time, and like kind of going back and forth of like, okay, this and that, and missing those smaller details. I got to take my time to walk down Main Street. I got to take my time to walk through Adventureland and really just pick like, oh, I feel like I'm going to go do this right now. Because at the end, when I had to break off to go and finish up some stuff I needed to do, it was kind of cool because I was like, okay, I was like, it's a bummer, I'm by myself. But then at the same time, I was like, sweet, I see that Space Mountain's a 5-minute wait. And I don't have anyone saying that, oh, well, I don't want to ride it, or, oh, I already rode it 10 times, or making someone wait for me. It was like, oh, I'm just going to go and do it. And then when I'm done, I can just go to the next place. So it was really freeing to be able to do it all on my own. And at the same time, it was a little sad. But I do recommend, I think everyone should take it one Disney vacation by themselves at some point, because I also met a lot of really cool people when I did single rider lines. I met a kid who I rode with him and his leftover chicken. That was an exciting one from dinner. So yeah, you meet a lot of fun people too.
What ride was the kid trying to bring chicken?
Incredicoaster. So I was sitting there and they single line and they get in there, and these two girls, one who was the one with the hand sanitizer wipes, she's like, hey, you don't have to ride alone with just your chicken anymore. And I look at this kid and I'm like, I'm sorry, your chicken? And he was like, oh, it's my leftovers. So the whole ride, all I could smell was like roasted chicken. It was amazing. He was super nice.
I think that was also a benefit of the wait times when we were there, where it felt like you didn't have to overplan, obsessively think about what are we going to rope drop? Where are we heading next? Because the one day we literally rope dropped It's a Small World.
Yep.
And it wasn't even ready for rope drop, and we still waited for it because we didn't care. It was so freeing to know that if you missed Indiana Jones at rope drop, you weren't going to have to wait 2 hours to do it later in the day. You could do it later in the day and it would be 25 minutes. And after the fireworks, it got even easier to walk on to almost everything.
Yeah, I feel like we spent after the fireworks walking upstream through all those people, because literally it was like everyone and their kids, because there's only one fireworks show a night. It's not like it used to be where you'd have one at 9 and then one at 11. It was because they closed at 11, but there wasn't the two. So everyone with kids, it was like a stroller wave coming towards you. So it's like, I think that took us longer than getting on most rides was to get through that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We went right back to Fantasyland and we got on a couple of those rides and just blew through it and were able to do almost everything we wanted. We didn't, it's hard to stress this enough, but we didn't really wait for anything.
I was trying to think of the longest wait that we did, and I feel like nothing really. I mean, Indy that one day was a little bit of a wait. Getting on Snow White was a little bit of a wait, but nothing was anything that stuck in my mind like, oh, we waited forever for this. Oh, except for the one time that we'll probably talk about coming up in the next episode of Web Slingers, but we'll get there.
Yes, a boarding group does not always guarantee no wait time for a ride, and we will talk about that next week. But that does bring me to, I think this is where we're going to end this episode. You did bring up Snow White and the new refurbed version of Snow White. What did you think of it?
I thought it was really cute. I didn't know what to expect. I love how much more we see Snow White, because before there was only that one figure that was at the beginning on the stairs. And now the way that they've revamped it, I thought it was really cute, and it has a fun, you get the whole story now, not just the story to a certain point.
Obviously, a lot of us Disney fans can be purists and not want things to change. This was a good change. Whether you wanted it to change or not, it changed, so you better be happy that at least they did a good job with it. I think this was great because you have a ride that scared small children in Fantasyland, which probably isn't the best idea. You make it a little cuter. You keep some of the scares. You keep the most iconic scary scene of the whole ride. The whole ride doesn't have to stay scary the whole time. Give me that one scene and then change everything else. Make it a little better. Have it end on the happier note, which it didn't the last time. I think it was perfect. I really, really like the change, and it revitalized that ride where, like you said, it did maybe have a 15 to 20 minute wait, where Pinocchio had a 5-minute wait and Mr. Toad had a 10-minute wait. It made it a little closer to Peter Pan because they had this refurb.
You know, Fantasyland doesn't need two attractions that end in a dark place. I mean, Mr. Toad already does. So now he can be alone in his dark place.
But if you are listening, Disney execs, I gave you a pass at Magic Kingdom, but Mr. Toad's Wild Ride has to stay forever. I think that's a good spot to say goodbye to Sarah for today, but she will definitely be back to talk about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Avengers Campus. Both were her first times experiencing those lands.
Yes, I'm super excited to talk about those.
Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the show. Remember, you can always reach me at rick@eartotheirtravel.com or 727-507-3123. Right now, I wanted to address some of these controversial moves that Disney has been announcing in recent weeks. We knew there was always a possibility that when FastPass returned to the parks, that it was going to be a paid service, and that is certainly the case. Genie Plus will be $15 per person per day at Walt Disney World and $20 per person per day at Disneyland. And there will also be some rides that will be accessible through Lightning Lane, where you can pay a one-time fee to ride that attraction with minimal wait. I promise you we will have an episode devoted solely to these services in the future. Today is more about discussing the blowback that came with this news. When you combine Genie Plus with the changes to the annual pass holder programs at WDW and Disneyland, many people are thinking that Disney is nickel and diming fans. Listen, I can understand why people are feeling that way. A Disney vacation isn't cheap, and this has the potential to make it even more expensive. With that in mind, I will talk about this a lot on the podcast. There's a difference between price and value. Just because something is cheaper doesn't mean it's a good value. We see this in many other areas of our lives. You can buy the cheapest used car, or you can spend more for a newer used car or a brand new car that could cost you less money in the long run. You may save money on gas, and your trips could end up being more enjoyable. All of that goes into value. A prime example of this for me is the recent addition of the After Hours Boo Bash at Magic Kingdom and Walt Disney World. It costs a lot more than a Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party from past years. People have also noted that it doesn't have a fireworks show, parade, or stage show. Still, the crowds were much, much lighter than a Not So Scary event, and there were free sodas and snacks for the duration of the night. Personally, I felt Boo Bash was a better value than Not So Scary, even though it was more expensive. If I'm to just take a guess, I think Genie Plus will be great for people who travel to the Disney parks every few years. Those people are already spending a good deal of money to have a magical experience, so adding the extra money to maximize their enjoyment of the parks and maximize the time that they can spend doing other things besides standing in line could really add that value to the trip. I could absolutely see a scenario in which a family just shells out, and this is just a random number I'm making up from scratch, $100 to make sure everybody gets to ride Star Wars Rise of the Resistance on their Hollywood Studios day. This might mean that the family doesn't need to schedule an entire second day at Hollywood Studios. If it takes you 4 park days to do what it would take other groups 6 days to accomplish, maybe you save the price of those 2-day tickets. It's another example of price versus value. We're not going to know exactly how beneficial Genie Plus will be for guests until it's fully operational. And like everything else that is new, I'm sure there will be a lot of changes fairly quickly as Disney tries to perfect the system as well. I'm going to be reserving my judgment until I've seen it in action. What I do know is that Disney is really showing us what types of guests are important to them and when those guests are important to them. The new pricing system for annual passes makes me think that Disney is really trying to force Florida residents into APs with blackout dates. Luckily, I won't have to make this decision for another year because I just renewed my pass, but to get no blackout dates, I would have to pay roughly $400 more per year than I pay now. Granted, there aren't as many blackout dates as the other levels have had in past years. If I decide to drop down to a level below for roughly the same price I pay now, I can do that. 2021 might be the last year that I schedule my annual Christmas Eve visit. I probably won't find it worth it in 2022 to pay $400 extra to do that. And I also probably won't buy a day ticket to get around the blackout dates. This is another reason that I think these changes benefit the travel party that visits every few years. More than likely, that's going to be the type of party that can only go in the summer, on holiday weekends, or other busier times. In addition to having access to Genie Plus to reduce wait times, Disney is discouraging more and more local pass holders from clogging up the parks during those high traffic times. On the other end of the spectrum, Walt Disney World will have a new AP that focuses on providing weekday access to the parks to Florida residents for a rate that is a lot cheaper than any of the previous AP prices. My mother's actually looking into that pass as an option that may have made it more affordable for her to visit on a regular basis. Unlike what a lot of people say on the internet, Disney does appreciate the loyal APs who visit regularly, but the reservation system and the newer levels of passes will help them funnel APs to times that Disney believes is beneficial to them. I'm not saying if it's good or bad. I do understand it, however. Guests who live in the Orlando area and can head to the parks after work or on holiday weekends, as a rule, aren't going to be spending as much money in the parks on food and other items. Locals certainly aren't shelling out $30 for an Ariel bubble wand on a regular basis. Disney wants them to be at Epcot on a random Tuesday to try different items from whatever festival's happening at the time, but the company doesn't benefit from those same guests adding to the queue for Slinky Dog Dash on Memorial Day. The one constant is change, and every new plan like this will have unintended consequences. Let's wait to see how this works before we judge it. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 32 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Sarah from Seattle will be back on the show next week as we continue talking about the recent vacation to Disneyland Resort. That trip was Sarah's first time in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge on either coast, and both of our first times in Avengers Campus at Disney's California Adventure. Hear her thoughts on those two experiences on Thursday. Until then, have a great week.